This is American History for Tuesday, October 20th. This is Lesson 10. Now, a reminder that this will be a little bit shorter than most lessons because the students have taken the Lesson 9 walkout worksheet. So if you are watching this at home and you have not been to school for this day, you need to do the Lesson 9 walkout worksheet. That's the one that's found on your Google Classroom. Well, the big issue going into the 1808 presidential election was Indian conflict along the Ohio River Valley. Basically, where the Ohio touches Indiana and Illinois. Now, there were many Western congressmen who blamed the British. These congressmen were called warhawks. They demanded that the United States go to war with Great Britain. In 1808, Jefferson chose not to run for a third term. So Jefferson's Secretary of State, James Madison, is going to be chosen by the Democrat Republicans. The Federalists are going to go back to Charles Pinckney. The hope is that the nation will be upset with the Democrat Republicans because of the Embargo Act. You can see from the Electoral College map that Pinckney did better than he had done in 1804, but still Madison won an easy victory. Now, James Madison's biggest concern is to eliminate the Embargo Act. The Embargo Act had hurt the United States badly. It had not done what it was supposed to do. So to eliminate the Embargo Act, Congress is going to pass Macon's Bill number 2. Now basically what Macon's Bill number 2 does is it said that the embargo on American ships are over. We're going to see over the course of the next 4 years a gradual recovery of the American shipping business. We learned yesterday about Tecumseh, and Tecumseh had been able to unite Native Americans along the Ohio River Valley, and they are beginning to attack American civilizations along the Ohio. Now, most Americans believe that Tecumseh and his followers were supported by the British. The British had hoped to use Ohio, Indiana, Illinois area as a buffer between them and Canada. To stop this, the Indiana militia, under the command of William Henry Harrison, is going to attack the Indian nation at Prophetstown at what we call the Battle of Tippecanoe. Prophetstown was near Tippecanoe Creek. This video is going to talk about this particular battle. Now, this battle is going to make William Henry Harrison a household name. Within a few short years, we're going to hear about William Henry Harrison. We're going to hear about Tippecanoe and Tyler too in the election of 1840. Well, with this, Madison's first term is just about over. And the congressmen from the West are beginning to beat the drum for war. Now, the congressmen from the West want to invade Canada. This here is a picture of Henry Clay. Henry Clay will be important to Missouri on Thursday. The congressmen wanted a war with Canada for 2 reasons. Number one, they wanted the land. They wanted the land that was part of Canada that surrounded the Great Lakes. The feeling was, let the British have the land along the St. Lawrence River, but let the Americans have land on either side of the Great Lakes. In addition to this, the Warhawks wanted to eliminate the Indians. The Warhawks wanted to travel into Canada to destroy the pipeline that had been supplying the Indians with guns. The Indians were fighting for their land, and of course we believe they were being supplied by the British. In the election of 1812, war will become the mandate. If you vote for James Madison as he runs for a second term, you are asking for a war with Great Britain over Canada. Now, the Federalists are going to choose Dwight Clinton. Dwight Clinton was a very popular governor of the state of New York. We're soon going to hear about something called Erie Canal. DeWitt Clinton had been responsible for the construction of the Erie Canal. The Federalists opposed the war. The Federalists said in Congress that the process of recovering from the Embargo Act was quite long and that they still had not recovered. The green states are Mr. Madison. The brown states are Mr. Clinton. You can see that it is a victory for Mr. Madison, although it is much closer than the one he had defeated Charles Pinckney at in 1808. Now, America felt confident that it could defeat the British because of the bulk of the British Army, the bulk of the British Navy was fighting in Napoleon in Europe. The plan was going to be quite simple. With the British Army and British Navy involved in the Napoleonic Wars, the United States would only have to fight Canadian militia and, of course, the Native Americans. The American militia from the western states and the western territories were scheduled to invade British forts along the Great Lakes. Each Great Lake had several British forts near them. The idea was that American militias from Ohio, Indiana, and from some of the western states like Kentucky and Tennessee would invade the British forts. The American Navy would sail along the coastline of the United States, protecting American ships. And in American seaports, forts would be constructed to ward off any attack by the British. Well, the plan went down to failure. Most of the land battles along the Great Lakes ended in defeat for the American, or indecision. It was only at Lake Erie that the Americans were able to taste success. Commodore Oliver Hazard Perry of the United States Navy is going to construct a fleet of wooden ships in the Ohio region near what is now Cleveland. The British are going to do the same thing where the Thames River enters Lake Erie. Perry will be able to defeat the British on Lake Erie. It is Perry who will send a message to President Madison. We have met the enemy and they are ours. At the same time, Perry is going to organize a fleet that is going to take an army led by William Henry Harrison and Indiana militia to the Canadian side of Lake Erie. Here there will be a land battle, which we generally call the Battle of the Thames. It was here that the great Indian chief, along with most of his braves, will be killed. Tecumseh had prophesied this earlier. The war took a drastic turn in 1914. In 1914, Napoleon will be defeated at Waterloo. And now the British attention will turn toward the Americas. The British plan was quite simple. Great Britain was going to have invasions of the north through Lake Champlain and invasions from the south through New Orleans. The British would also invade along Chesapeake Bay. The first invasion, the invasion of Lake Champlain, would be met by the American naval commander Thomas MacDonough. Thomas MacDonough is going to build a fleet of ships on Lake Champlain, and it is here that the British Navy is going to be defeated. Hundreds of miles away, Winfield Scott and the New York militia, along with the United States Army, is going to defeat the British at Lundy's Lane. Now, Lundy's Lane is one of the few places along the Niagara River where where armies can cross. Now, on the map, you'll see Queenstown and Lewistown. That's about where Lundy's Lane is at. And here, this will be another great American victory. The British ships are going to drop off a sizable number of men in Virginia. It is here that American militia is supposed to stop the British invasion, but they do not. And the British are going to move toward Washington, D.C. When the British reach Washington, D.C., the American militia will not be able to stop them. The White House, the Capitol, and most important buildings will be destroyed by the British. Only through the efforts of James Madison's wife, Dolly Madison, that some of our national treasures were saved. The Constitution, the Declaration of Independence, the picture of George Washington by Gilbert Stuart. Finally, the British troops will continue up Chesapeake Bay, aiming for Baltimore. Now, Baltimore is protected by an earthen fort called Fort McHenry. Fort McHenry was the key. If the British could not get past Fort McHenry, they would not be able to capture Baltimore. Francis Scott Key was an American who had gone aboard a British ship to negotiate the surrender of an American who had mistakenly been picked up by the British. Once Key gets on board the ship, he is not allowed to leave because of the bombardment of Fort McHenry. All night, the fort will be bombarded. In dawn's early light, Key will notice that the American flag still flies, and he will write down a poem called the Star-Spangled Banner. Soon, this poem will be married to a song called An Acronym in Heaven, and the United States has its national anthem. However, the national anthem will not be played until we get into the 20th century. Here is a short video about the Battle of Fort McHenry. Well, this would be a good place for us to stop. A reminder that we need to look at the end of the War of 1812 and specifically the battle for New Orleans.